I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice. Tumbling down the rabbit hole?
You could say that.
I can see it in your eyes. You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he's expecting to wake up.
Welcome, everybody. This is Team Rabbit Hole Edition 315 with Erin Mirelli, Death Ed. Welcome, Erin, and welcome, Jim. Welcome, everyone in chat.
Yeah. Erin, thanks for coming. This has been like forever. I've been trying to get you on for like years, literally. But whether I was not podcasting or just time didn't sync up, it didn't work. But I'm going to read some stuff and then we'll start geeking out. So, yes, episode 315, Erin Mirelli, Death Ed, like Raphael said, like sex ed, death ed, education. Death Doula, Mother, Educator, Pisces. Join the team as we get to know Erin, a hip and compassionate mama who schools others about what she knows about death, dying, and what it means for the living. So I pulled cards at the beginning of these things, and like I told y'all, I tried to rig the Russian roulette, and it didn't work. So this came out. No matter what, the Four of Cups is coming out, and basically it says,
Tell him what you did, Jim. So Jim
well,
tried
it
to
came
fake
out,
the
and I
tarot
was
because
like,
he was like, I don't like the card, and then
I
he
don't- it
shuffled
doesn't-
again, and the same card
put that
came
fish
up.
back.
And why?
Throw it back.
Why am I repeating this? Because if everyone is practicing with tarot, this is one of the great things you can encounter, this incredible synchronicity. And that sometimes, well, even if you don't like it, it's just going to come back. And maybe
What
it's
you
a
need to
good
see.
idea to contemplate the hint.
Yeah. I mean, it was like me trying to cheat the Matrix, but that is like, oh, I got shot by Agent Smith. Anyway, so I'm hurt and poisoned by life. It's about rebuilding your life to receive blessings. Because the Three of Cups is about like the party. It's like everybody celebrate. And then the Four Cups is like, I have a hangover. Oh my God, I did it too hard. So be grateful for what is around you and emotional overwhelm. Like, this guy's like, oh my gosh, I spilled my cups. God help me. So I'm kind of wondering between the number of the episode 315 or the card itself or anything like that, does anything resonate or sync up for you, Erin?
Hi, brother Jim and Raphael and everyone. I already like this because, I'm introducing myself by telling you how the cards resonate with my life in a challenging way. So we're going to be on an authentic track today. Rebuilding my life. I'm doing that in every way. I have kind of run one death company for several years, and that ended abruptly and kind of unexpectedly last year. So I've rebuilt a whole death business in the last year. And that level of like, a tower happened and now we're rebuilding. The hangover, as you would call it, kind of resonates in the rest of my life too, and stuff that's going on in my family and in my personal life and in every way. Yeah. A lot of like, okay, the grief happened. And now we keep climbing. Yeah.
Right. And it's funny because this is like making room for blessings to come in. And in a sense, like there's a place for grief, especially as like during death and stuff. If you're surrounded by people, like you can hang on to this. You've seen the cliches in movies where somebody doesn't touch the room for 20 years because they just don't know how to deal with the passing of a person or whatever. But you have to move that energy. You have to move it at some point or else it stagnates and stuff. So it's like, yes, there's a season for grief and a season for spilled milk and all this stuff, sour grapes, whatever. Like, oh my God, shit falls apart, things die, things don't go according to plan, or the party ends. But then we have to kind of take a deep breath and move forward through that if we are to expect any, not just going in circles like a spiral, like we're going to corkscrew, but that requires a pivot of degree or whatever, like a whatever.
It's the heart of it. It's all the cliches at once. It's that the only way out is through, right? It's that we have to feel it to heal it, but really what it is that trauma calcifies into disease or addiction or cancer, or, trauma calcifies if we don't move it, and grief calcifies if we don't move it. And so it's this combination of moving it, hopefully in ways that are constructive, supported by community, freedom, free in their expression. But as you said, like, we can't stay there forever. But that's the beautiful part, is when we do engage in rituals or activities where we're intentionally working with that grief and moving that grief, we don't want to stay in the circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're just naturally not stuck in it as much, because it gives it a place to express, and then that elevates it.
It's almost like the water breaking on a new birth or something. So it's like at some point you can gestate. And in a weird way, I mean, it depends upon one's ontological presuppositions or whatever, but it's like there's nothing wrong. How would I put it? Like, we get the choice. Like, what we choose, we experience in a sense. So if you want to hold on to the teddy bear forever, it's like you're going to have a security blanket or whatever. And that can happen with certain emotional kind of things. We can just sit there and be like, oh my God, why me? But then we can flip it. Actually, there was a really good, I don't know if you're into Black Mirror, but there was a good episode with Paul Giamatti on the newest season of that, where he had this, like, I don't want to get too much into spoilers, but it's like he had an ex and he had a horrible breakup and, burnt out all her pictures and stuff. And AI was trying to recreate it for this funeral. It's a long story, but basically it's like he had a whole wrong paradigm on the thing.
Yeah.
And that necessarily caused him to have a trajectory. So it's not even a mistake, but like our actions and our thoughts and stuff do have consequences. It's not like, avoidable. Anyway, I'm rambling. Gemini life. So, like I said, I don't even know how I became aware of you. Maybe through Adrienne Tamar, or something like that. She's a Pisces as well. She's been on the podcast, actually. Shout out. She's cool. I actually wrote a song for one of her art pieces. She's an amazing artist.
Yeah,
she's so dope. Anyway, so I don't know how that would have happened, but many years ago, 5, maybe up to 10 even years ago, our paths digitally crossed, and we've been in peripheral ships in the night communication. Nothing too much. Every now and then I'm like, oh, you're a Pisces, blah blah. But I've always found you interesting, and for whatever reason resonating, I don't know, with me. And I'm like, I have a feeling not only your story but what you're up to is magical and high weirdness kind of stuff. And then once you started explaining what you're up to, I was like, oh shit, we got to get you on the podcast. So let's get into the nitty gritty. Tell us, I mean, you're born, okay, so people don't, if she doesn't know, she's a Pisces sun, but her rising is exactly conjunct her Mercury in Pisces, and in the first house, the sun, Merc, and ascending. So it doesn't surprise me that you're kind of a portal in a sense, as a person, as a self, for the spiritual and the beyond. And then your Saturn and Pluto are conjunct, but your Pluto's in Libra and your Saturn's in Scorpio. So it's like you're structuring death rituals, if you want to put it that way, and that's eighth house, both of those. So it's like when people die and they're changed by death, like you're there to be this kind of gate in a sense. I mean, this is just a hot take, but this
I love it.
Yes. But yeah, I was like, oh shit. So you probably always had a weird life, but let's hear about it. What I was getting at, you were born in, I don't need to get too many details, just because why, but this place called I think Stillwater, and then your name is Merelli, which Mare is like ocean, right? So you're a Pisces, got all this water energy. There's a whole lot of water symbolism. I'm totally shocked nobody else other than yourself had noticed that before.
I loved that you said that when you told me before the show, the water thing, because I mean, I'm and the double Pisces. I just I get in the shower and all the downloads come. I'm like, I wish I could hook my brain up to something that would record my thoughts and my epiphanies while I'm in the shower. Water is such a portal for me. It's child abuse though. I didn't go to the ocean until I was 17 years old ever. Like, it didn't.
What?
I lived in landlocked areas. And now
I fish in the cage.
fly to the ocean every like 2 to 6 weeks. I can't stay away, and we'll live there as soon as life opens up in that way. But water is such a portal for me. Such a portal.
Makes sense. I mean, like just astrologically, you should be fucking with water. And even in the 4 of Cups, cup water card, it's like, oh my gosh, look, I was never at the beach before, or whatever. All right. So anyway, yes, my name is Jim, and I'm a Gemini. So if Raphael were to say that,
that's a good one.
Yeah. Anyway, I've always been like, I should have an album with my brother or something. He plays drums. He's a Gemini. It's like Gemini. Anyway, wordplay, whatever. So anywho, tell us a little about who thou art. The conch is yours, as they say, but I want to kind of get an idea of the formation of your cultural narrative. Maybe when you started noticing weird things, or like any stories or anecdotes that you find pertinent, and we can weave through that.
I think like so many children, I just had a strong sixth sense and an awareness and a knowing that went far beyond what was in my, visual field or my five senses. And I don't think this is unusual for children to kind of be oriented this way, but it's not common for society to reinforce it and to make space for it and to kind of teach us these skills. So I don't necessarily know if my childhood was unusual or if a lot of people, Pisces in particular, relate to an experience growing up where it really just felt I had like one foot in this world and one foot in another world. And this world was real, but so was, this other world. And I don't mean that in a schizophrenic way. I mean, just in a very literal way. I could just see beyond this world that we're supposed to believe in. And I had an understanding that I was supposed to believe in it. And there was a level of subscription to it, but that it was incomplete. I had a lot of out-of-body experiences where I would watch myself, in third person from the ceiling or from another space, kind of like going through the human motions and the human experiences. I remember some of my really early thoughts, like, 4 or 5-year-old earliest memories were when I was like, had an ant farm. And I was like, so I'm in charge of the ants. Like, I'm the god to the ants. Like, who's the god to me? Like, who's playing with me? Like, I play with the Barbies. Like, who's playing with me? Right? So just an existential child.
I mean, you have a lot of water, but you do have a moon in Capricorn. So you are emotionally wondering, like, what's the hierarchy here? Who's in charge? How does this work?
How does this work? Why am I here again? Why,
Did I sign up for this?
Yeah. What is really going on here? Raised in a Catholic family, but my best friend was Baptist. And so I realized early on I would go to church with her and just how different our churches were and how, I had a spiritual connection and, this kind of affinity towards faith, but I didn't fully believe any of the teachings because how can they be so different, and hers has better food and I like her music better, right? And that kind of thing. And I continued on with that theme throughout my teenage years and my young adulthood, just going to as many churches as I could and kind of like searching, like, where is the key? Like, what is this? Simultaneously, I had a deep relationship with death. The very first memory that I have of death in my life is also one of those like peripheral 4 years old memories that's more fluid than solid. And that I wonder if I've told myself the story so many times that that's what I think it is now. But I remember my mother sitting me on my bed in my room and telling me the story of a grandfather that I didn't know very well who had died. And she was concerned that I would be sad, right? And she's telling it to me in a very sensitive way. But I am thinking like, but like he's sitting right here. Like I could see him sitting on the bed and I didn't know him again. So there wasn't this like deep connection that, so there was no grief is my point. And there was just this kind of like, of course. Right. And I think my mom was like, what a peculiar response you have had to this. And then I learned a lot more about death when I was 17 and my first love died in a car accident. And we had been together for 2 years. And when you're 17, that's your whole life, right?
Yeah.
And we were very in love. And it's still to this day hard for me to talk about, to be honest, because I think at the time I felt so isolated in that grief. I felt like, I didn't know anybody else who had experienced either a young love like that or a profound like loss like that at such a young age. And I watched, friends and community members kind of go through the motions of mourning in a way that didn't help me, like with an overly religious cast. And then I watched, a couple of months later that they had moved on and they were like going back to the football games and they were, and I couldn't, I was so incredibly stuck in this portal between this world and the world he was in and felt like I was reaching for him and he was reaching for me. And actually, I can send it later if you guys add any images into the edits, but he was an artist and his name was Adam. And a few weeks before he died, and to trail off a little bit into like more thematic stuff, it's so common for people who die unexpectedly to have premonitions or for them to have said something or done something in the weeks before their death that when they do die, people are like, the weirdest thing happened. Like they said the weirdest thing. And so a few weeks before he died, he had drawn this picture for me. And it was like a stargate. It was like a portal. It was a star, big star with smaller star, smaller star, smaller star. And then on either end, on either side of it, were 2 angels reaching for each other. And he said, this is us when we can't be together, when he gave it to me. And then he died 2 weeks later in a car accident. And I was, I saw his body when he died, and I went to the funeral and all of that. So I think that was the seed that would later turn into the death work that I do, because right, like our trials become our testimonies or whatever. There was just such a lack of support, and I needed it so much. And so it became my own healing and my own work to source it, to figure out what kind of support I needed. And a lot of that was esoteric, and some of that was like structural and community based and ritual based. And then once I developed that, which took a long time, many years, I wanted to give it to other people, and I wanted to share it, and I wanted to, look at what I found. Like, we can actually support each other better in the death space.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the process, I'm not saying it's not true for everybody, it's to varying degrees. It's kind of like a bell curve, but I think some people go through something to chew on it for themselves so then they can like mother bird regurgitate it to others, kind of thing. Yeah, as far as you were talking about your grandfather and stuff, whenever I give astrology readings, I do talk about Pisces being like in this world, but not of it exactly. You guys have one foot in each space. And because you have a Capricorn moon, you're very emotionally kind of stoic, even though you're super intuitive and emotional at a level, like you know how to like wrap it up and take it seriously and kind of, it's like not like a resting bitch face emotionally, but you see what I mean? Like there's this kind of like verklemtedness. It's kind of a paradox actually looking at your chart, because you're super watery and stuff, and then at the same time you're like, but
I need that part to function,
girl face,
or else I would just like float away into space. So that's like grounding.
It's a tether. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. And even the story, I mean, you were talking about, we pulled this out, and it wanted to come out, this card, and I was like, gosh damn. Like you were talking about emotional overwhelm. I mean, with the passing of Adam. So, and that's interesting about the art. I don't know very many people who have passed, for better or worse. And yeah, that's weird that you think or have the experience of knowing that people almost leave like precursive, premonitional reminders or whatever. It's like, hey, like whatever, the art, like you were describing. So I mean, are you Italian?
Yeah, about 35% or so.
Okay, it's in the name at least. I was like, and then when you said Catholic, I was like, all right, I didn't know there was a big old contingency in Oklahoma, but okay. So do you have siblings?
I have siblings. I have a sister who died by suicide 3 years ago, my older sister, and I have 2 younger brothers, and then some steps as well. The steps are like the brilliant ones that took the right path in life. And you guys are the bios, we're all a little sensitive. Yeah. Okay.
Once again, death touching your life. So it's not terribly surprising. I mean, your structure, your life is Saturn is an eighth house for you. So it's like your life and Pluto's there. So you're going to go through a lot of transformations just in the structure of your life being touched by death. I guess you're making, peace with that and how to work with that. Did you go to college?
I did. I went to CU Denver, and then CU Denver. And I have degrees in music and in business, which, does anybody use their college degree? I never really used it. I did bookings at a nightclub for a while. I was the choir director for my daughter's school. That was about as much as I used my music degree. And then I have a few different certifications, in birth doulaship and hospice stuff and ministry and, things that support my role in the death space.
That makes sense. I actually got admitted to CU Denver for their songwriter thing right around COVID, and they wanted me to get vaccinated. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. So I never got it. Not that we all need degrees, but it's funny. We would have been alma mater or whatever. You've got Jupiter and Uranus conjunct on your MC in Sag in 9th house. I mean, it wants to be there. Jupiter's exalted there. So it's not terribly surprising.
What does that mean? What does all that mean?
Oh God. Sagittarius is about truth, higher philosophy, like capital T truth, religion, so to speak. So the fact that you're kind of messing around and exploring different religions, whether it's your Baptist friend back at home and it's conjunct Jupiter where you expand and where your luck is conjunct Uranus, which is like epiphany and like punctuation kind of events, like chaos in a way, but like you had some radical spiritual experiences, and even just like pennies dropped that maybe your culture around you doesn't quite get. So maybe you're like, it's cool to be Catholic. I'm not even against it necessarily. I mean, I don't care what people are, let's put it that way. But maybe there was a point where you're just like, this shoe doesn't fit, or whatever, kind of like you were saying, and that might have been very unexpected in a weird way. Like you're like, well, I'm stretching my arms out and this jacket's too tight or whatever kind of vibes. But also you were saying with your the choir of your daughter or whatever. So it's like you're not even against playing with and music is a Neptunian thing, Pisces all day. So anyway, I'm rambling. I'm kind of half looking at your chart. So Okay. So you finished your degree and you messed around at a nightclub and booked it up.
Well, when I finished my degree, I had a 4-year-old. I had a daughter when I was 19.
Oh my
So
gosh.
conjunct to all of the loss, there is like birth and life and a really abusive relationship with her father. So a lot of like, as you said in the beginning, like with the cups, like holding grief and challenge and struggle in one hand and like, but fuck, I'm alive and I have this child to take care of and I'm, studying music, which I love. And I have all these friends and I have so many questions about the world and it's just holding them both at the same time, right? That's the aliveness. So yeah, graduated, had a 4-year-old, took a kind of pseudo corporate job in insurance sales for a while, which was really random, but I needed the money. And I think it's good for everybody to have like a little experience in that world.
Moon and Caps, like I gotta earn money. I gotta make that bread.
Yeah, I gotta make that bread. They were very nice to me. They let my daughter come to work with me and I would bring like a 4-foot long plastic like Tupperware box and put blankets and pillows and books and coloring stuff in there. She called it her little palette. They were very nice to me. One of my senior projects was on like how the workplace needs to provide childcare, or that would be a much nicer world.
They definitely accommodated. That's really
They
not too typical, but cool. Very good for you.
Yeah,
so you do you play music or do you sing, or what's your relationship to music?
I sing. I can play a little piano and a little guitar, but nothing to brag about.
Okay, well, I'm not going to make you sing live here, but I don't know if I knew you sang, so maybe at some point I'll hit you up and be like, let's collaborate, let's do something, because I like messing around with people that are cool, like musically and stuff. So, what kind of music are you into? Were you like, Gregorian chant, or what? Like, what are you into?
I do like a little Gregorian chant. I was in a choir last year and that was fun. I like choral music. I'm a choir girl at heart and was in choirs in churches and in musicals in college and in high school growing up. So performance wise, I would say that I guess really you're hitting a weakness. You're hitting a weakness here. I had kids and just gave music up. Really, is what
put it on the back burner.
Yeah, I put it on the back burner. So it's really more of like a unfulfilled ache at this point in my life.
Well, maybe I could help massage that midwife stillborn out of you or something. Who knows? But because it's, in a sense, you can't miss anything meant for you, I don't think. I mean, that's a belief of mine at this point. It's not necessarily true for everybody or true at all. But if we go about things being like, maybe it's not what we expect, but you can't always get what you want, right, kind of thing. You can't miss what you need. So even though your monkey mind might be like, well, I wanted to be Britney Spears, God damn it, or whatever.
I've always known it's coming back for me. So.
Okay. Coming back around again, as
you
they say.
Can't lose what's inside you. So
no. All right. So you did the insurance thing, and were you still like having kind of out of body experiences? Were you messing with psychedelics? Like, what was your awareness of the? I mean, clearly you got a job and hunkered down as a mother, and like that takes on another hue of reality.
Yeah.
So maybe you weren't just like wilding it out or whatever. But what? Tell us a little about your relationship with the mystic and the psychonautic or whatever, all these things. Like, how did you relate to this stuff?
So it was an evolution. I am 42. So I've been trying to do the adult thing for a minute now. And back in those days, my daughter's 22. So 20 years ago when the kids were young, I think I tried to challenge it. I think I went through a phase of trying to fit into normalcy, knowing that it was unsatisfying, honestly, but kind of trading it in for safety and security and my parents' approval and, the white picket fence kind of situation. I completely married the wrong person. And I knew he was the wrong person when I married him, but I thought he was a safe choice, which is terrible.
Interesting lesson.
Yeah. Well, and I stayed married to him for 10 years. We've now been divorced for 11 years. And he is still the bane of my existence. And I'm like, we can talk about a lot of things I do understand and wisdom I have acquired. But when it comes to some of anyway.
Life lesson. You said, I want to lose all my tires during the race and have my engine explode during the Indy 500 or whatever. I mean, I don't know if you know his birth time and stuff. I can look at y'all's synastry and stuff and try to weed that out.
Oh yeah. There has got to be some important cosmic reason I would be tortured by this person for so long. And he's kind of like, he's dumb. I had to really learn to walk with one foot in each world, so that I could be like domestic, like borderline trad wife in that lifestyle. Not really, I'm exaggerating, but much more.
You wore a mask, I hear you.
Yeah. And then be in this world. And so I would always attract the people in this world and, they would come to me and that was great. And I knew I had outlets for that there, but I was very split, trying to do that until really realizing that I was just stunting my own growth and stunting my own brilliance and stunting myself from having the life that I wanted to have. And that the reason I was here and my dreams and my messages were so much bigger than this relationship was going to allow me to express and to explore. And so finally leaving it. And of course, being a really bad person for that.
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's tricky because obviously there's like emotional shrapnel or whatever. And maybe it turns, I mean, Raphael, you can speak on this to any degree you want. I'm not a marriage counselor or anything like that by any means. But once again, Four of Cups, right? The spilled milk. On the one hand, Pisces have boundary issues. So in a sense, you can kind of get lost in idealism and stuff. And even like you were saying, trying to just be like, well, I'm going to have whatever, the Shirley Temple life or whatever, whatever. She's a kid. That makes no sense. But you get what I'm saying.
I get what you're saying.
I'm kind of keeping quiet because in my mind already all the time I want to jump to the meta level of the whole thing. And
do it.
I'm just going to put it to you the way I just thought of it, trusting that you'll be okay with it. But to me, to my mind, it's just so incredible to think of the story you told in terms of having your first love, which is lost, with this image, and then getting into such kind of relationship. I'll be like, oh my God. Yes. But the real thing, of course, and I don't want to jump ahead, but I guess it all relates. Maybe briefly, you may want to explain what is your impression or perspective of the world beyond and of human existence. Because I sometimes even wonder, I am aware of quite a few of these ideas, and I'm quite prone to believe many of them. There's also quite some evidence we could have for some sort of eternal existence and holographic something. Then at the same time, sometimes I'm wondering, even if all of that were not true, would it still be better to assume it is just for mental sanity?
I think so.
So please, if you will, and if it's not too soon, Jim, share anything on that and how it relates to these experiences that you've been having the past years, aside from your work, maybe, or that's going to come in any second as well, of course.
Okay, ask me one more time more directly, because I feel like that was 6 questions.
Yes, thank you. So basically, my first question would be, let's say, just put it down to 2 questions. So how would you relate the idea of eternal existence, or what is there beyond? And also because, of course, especially with your story, would there be a divine reunion in heaven, for lack of a better term, in another life, in many lives? How do you envision that?
Well, we have to get outside of our own construct and outside of the idea of time and outside of the idea of embodiment being a thing that our soul can singularly commit to, right? So it really like bends all of the rules that we believe about humanity. And I also want to say that just because I believe it, as you said, to your point, doesn't mean that it's true. Doesn't even mean that I believe that it's true. Just believe, means that it is the nicest belief I have fallen upon, and I have some evidence to support it, and I like the way it feels to believe it, right? So,
like they say, use your illusion. I mean, worst case scenario, we're delusional, but I mean, what's the choice? Like, be nihilistic fucking cynics or whatever.
And we can be cosmonauts, and we can be unembodied people who surf the cosmos by nature, and still not understand what the fuck is going on, right? So I never want to act like I know exactly what is going on, but I've seen a lot of people die, and I have a lot of relationships with the dead. So I think I have some experience at least to maybe offer something. I think that I don't know. I was going to say, I think the soul is eternal. And then I shuddered to use the word eternal. I don't think the soul dies with the body. I think that its life is much longer than the body's. I don't know if it is eternal or not. I believe in like the greater concepts, of oneness, and that we are all kind of individual expressions, and really even the larger concept that it's all happening at one time, and we can only understand one lifetime at a time, or, process one experience, believe one experience one experience consciously at a time. But I think so much more is going on simultaneously than we can begin to understand. I think that when we die, we are, it's like taking off a heavy shoe, I think Ram Dass said, or a tight shoe. I think that it is a feeling of utter relief. I think it is a feeling of utter love and returning home. And like, when you're having a bad dream and like, you kind of know it's a dream, but you're still in it. And then you wake up and you're like, oh, fuck, thank God that was just a dream. I feel like we have a feeling like that when we die. Like, oh, I knew that wasn't the real, thank God I'm back here. And there's a familiarity to it. I think
that's like a relief, you're saying, in a way.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are you a dualist? Do you think that like spirit and body are different? Do you think it's all spiritual, or having this like trip of a quote material thing?
When we're dying, but still in the body?
Or just in general, like, are we asleep right now in some hyperdimensional thing and we've inserted 25 cents and we're in a goddamn arcade? You know, it's like, there's
Yes,
no right way.
I mean, I don't know. I would love to learn more about quantum physics and understand the physical part of it and have more of a theory around that part of it. I don't know if it's all a hologram and it's all a projection, or if this tangible, real stuff that they say has more air in between it than it has particles is real. I don't have a great answer on that part of it.
I think Einstein was a Pisces, and I don't have to go off into him.
I think it doesn't even matter in terms of the exact model. What may be more interesting, especially because you have the experiences, just even with this example you shared, and I heard this before about the premonitions when someone decides to leave, or I'm sure you have many other examples, and just what would you extrapolate from these experiences? Because, for example, and for some reason on Facebook now has shorts or whatever, and at least to me, you know, they micro target everyone pretty effectively. And after stepping away from some of the, let's say, more esoteric stuff for some time, suddenly my feed is flooded with Dolores Cannon, which you may be familiar with.
Yeah, I know who she is.
She does this quantum hypnosis thing, which actually surprisingly works. I tried it once. Someone was just reading it to me, this hypnosis. You can just read it to someone in a meditative state and they can see things. Or you have Michael Newton, who has the book and also interviews online called Life Between Lives.
That's an older one, yeah.
Similar to Dolores Cannon, he's kind of claiming, well, if you hypnotize people into the right state, even though they don't know about each other or anything like that, they start talking about all the same things, which is like there is some type of a, I was about to say judgment, but let's say
life review.
Review after death. There is some school, there is some things. Of course, this is just a human perspective to interpret that. Right. But still, if many people who maybe have never heard about these ideas recount similar things in that state, to me, that's also some type of, how do you call it, phenomenological evidence at the very least.
It is.
So I'm curious, about this or anything else you've experienced. What would you put together aside from whatever the exact model would be? That's not so important.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I think mine will be like, and what I think is a quote unquote normal one, but I think there's individuality in all of it, just like in life. I'll start by right before death. So deathbed visitors are a very common phenomenon to people who are dying, and they know they're dying. So not dying by an accident, but an illness, or dying over days or weeks, right? Even for people who claim to be atheist. I've worked with just as many atheists as religious people. That has very little to do with the care, but I have some sure observations, right? And regardless of their kind of spiritual disposition, these visions happen at the end of life. Sometimes they seem more spiritual, where the visitor is an angel or a deity, or, and sometimes it's not so much that, but it's like, I got to get to the airport. I got to go somewhere, right? Type of a visitor. But they have this knowing that they're leaving, and in every way, I mean, their communication, their cognition, what's happening to their body, we can watch and we can track that the spirit is starting to leave the body. It doesn't happen in an instant. It happens like a train. And so really, when you watch somebody die, you can watch them leave this world, and they're still here a little bit, but this other world that they're going into is expanding, and it's getting a lot bigger, and it is in the room with you, right? So sometimes when we're really privileged, we can attune to it and we can experience just a little bit of what that feels like for them. But there's always visitors, and there's always, whether it's a psychopomp, right, which is like a guide of souls, or it's their mother who died before them, or a dog who died before them. It can be anybody, but somebody comes to get you. Somebody's right there the second you're, it's just it's the same thing as when women give birth, and the midwife or the doctor or the doula or whoever it is, the mother is right there. Like, there's a waiting room. We're waiting to catch the baby. I think they're waiting on the other end. And it's just as much a birth into that world as it is a death from this one. I think that what that looks like depends on the person. For some people, it's this instant like homecoming party, and it's like all of your dead are there and it's amazing. And for other people, it's like a little bit more like, we got to ease into this, and I need somebody who can explain to me what's happening. So I think that there's a lot of variation in how we're received. It's whatever's going to support us, right? Go ahead.
Do you think that has to do with, at some level, how much quote work maybe somebody's done in their life? I think a Buddhist principle, maybe Socrates or somebody, was like, life is to prepare for death. Like, we're getting okay with the idea of mortality. We're getting okay with like doing things properly. So we're, you know, whether you're an Egyptian in the Hall of Mot with a feather and the feather of truth or whatever, or Christian or whatever it is, like you have the, I think it's generally culturally kind of understood that there's like an assessment of maybe the film you did. And if you feel like you've been sitting on the sidelines the whole time, you start having regrets and all this kind of, like I didn't do it right. And I'm not saying that's even the case, but yeah, do you think the orientation?
Yeah, I think that comes next. I think we get a warm welcome and like some like, you know, out of body healing, no matter what, you know, kind of like a soldier coming home from war. And then I think we have a life review. Then I think we have to unpack.
I'm guessing you've probably seen What Dreams May Come with Robin Williams. Yeah, it's a phenomenal film. Of course, you're Pisces. Yeah. But like that, I don't want to spoil it too much, but some of these characters, I mean, and Narnia, if you've ever read that, that's a big spoiler. I don't want to get into it. Yeah. But the idea that we're like lubricated into another, you know, reality, essentially, and that could look in the blink of an eye, that could look many books long, or you know, a whole movie long,
or little families there, you know, and it's wonderful. But there are painful parts too. It's like Scrooge's Christmas story when you have to look, you know, I think that part is a part of it, looking at what we've done wrong, looking at our mistakes. And I think that we mature and let go of a lot of ego as soon as we're unembodied as well. So I don't know that reviewing that is as painful as it would be now when we're humans, but we also don't reject it as much. We don't take it as seriously isn't the right word. We don't take it as personally, right? Like I think that that's the building blocks on which we design or plan what our next life is going to be, right? So like maybe the idea of karma is a little bit more self-selected, a little bit more like, oh, here's the things I hurt other people with, here's the mistakes I made, here's the holes in my plan. How can I create a next life that will help me to repair those?
Yeah, it's like film review in football or whatever, basketball.
Yeah,
like, all right, that was the game. Like when you're not in the game, you're not as charged by it emotionally and enraptured by the event. You know what I mean? Like what you're saying, there's a distance in a sense. Yeah. And when you can see things from a more objective, maybe not the right term, but from a disconnected perspective to a degree, you're not going to maybe sit there and weep over all the things you've done wrong, but maybe you do see like, hey, I could have done that a little differently, or I was coming from a place of trauma, or whatever it is.
I have 2 follow-up questions. And Jim, please check your mic settings for a second. Someone claims it may be picking up through your laptop instead of your microphone. You sound good, but still just to check. So Erin, I have 2 questions. Number 1 is, what is your experience? Because this is unfortunately what I experienced with recently departed, let's say, is that especially if there is some type of illness, which usually, of course, there's many reasons for this, and the medical system is often, how should I say, not very good at preventing this or giving you tips about healthy food and exercise. But anyways, what I experienced and what I wasn't that aware of, I guess, is that at least in Austria, what they love to do, they put you in a so-called hospice at the last weeks of your before your departure, if you're in state care, let's say. And then what they actually do is they kind of pump you full of opiates, from what I understand. And I guess in America, even more people are addicted to all kinds of official pharmaceuticals that actually are just packaged up street drugs, I almost want to say, but the bad kind. So I would like to know, number 1, would you say is preferable, or what is your experience with people that maybe are under heavy medication? Or did you experience some that had no medication at all? Was the experience different for them or for you? Would you say it has a different quality? And in a sense, I almost want to ask, what would you quote unquote recommend if there is a choice to be made?
This is a really good question and a sharp turn. So let's get into it. I will start by saying, as humans, we know very little about natural death anymore. We have intervened and medicalized and structured the whole thing in a way that is not necessarily looking at human care and human interest as much as it's looking at profits, quite frankly. So even the idea of like what is a natural death isn't a concept that we know anymore. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to move into a minute into the concept of medical aid in dying and the ethics of all of that. But even looking at animals, right? Like we're much more willing to bring our animal to the vet when it's time and to put them down and to be okay with that than we are in the human space. We do absolutely everything that we can to prohibit that in the human space. But back to animals, if we didn't do that, if we didn't euthanize our animals, how would they naturally die? One of 2 ways. Either we're chalking them up with pain meds and they're dying a little bit quicker because of that, a little bit less conscious because of that, or we're not doing that. They're in tremendous pain. The dying might take longer. They might suffer more right? And they'll likely like run off and do it in private and not be watched. So we're really uncomfortable as a culture with pain and with suffering. And should we or shouldn't we be is a whole nother question, right? I don't see the sense in unnecessary suffering. I do think we need suffering to build character in certain aspects of our life, but I have seen death be very, very brutal. I have seen people suffer tremendously because of their pain physically, and their incompetence and their inability to do things, and now they're burdening their caretakers. And if it's mental as well, it's torture for them to live inside their body in those spaces. But because our culture is so determined on quantity over quality, and we will take every measure we can to keep somebody just barely alive, right? Like just barely suffering, and somehow, because we're so afraid of death, we think that that's better, right? And then their family for weeks or for months is like pulled away from their jobs at the bedside and worried about the expense of this. And so there's a lot to say in the conversation, but like starting with like, we don't even really know what natural death is anymore because we don't let people do that. In hospice care at the end of life, what here in the States anyway, what that means is that they're no longer on life-sustaining medications. So for example, if they were on dialysis or medicine for their heart that was keeping them alive, they no longer take that. So it's saying, yes, we're going to let the body die, and all we're going to do is manage the pain. If it's a good hospice, it's like got good ethics and understands how this works, that's an autonomous choice for the family and the dying person to make on their own. And we try not to judge it ethically. Like, you can have more pain medication. Here's what that will do for you positively and negatively. You may die more quickly. You will definitely be more comfortable, but have your last conversation soon, because your mind and your consciousness and your communication skills are going to leave, or vice versa. And so as a death doula, that's part of the work, is having these conversations with families about which one do you want, because it's really up to you. And then the far other side of that is medical aid in dying. And Raphael, where did you say you're from?
Austria. Below Germany, yeah.
What is the legality there for medical aid in dying, which is called, physician assisted death? It's called different things in different places.
Oh, I haven't heard that one yet. Physician assisted. So as far as I understand, I believe that is pretty much illegal. I think that in Switzerland there may be a law for it. I'll look it up for you in a second.
Cool.
I think they've got like death pods now where you can kind of just go in and it
turns off oxygen. In Switzerland they do. Yeah. In Switzerland they do. In the US, 11 out of the 51 states allow medical aid in dying. In Colorado, here where I live, is one of them. And so a lot of my work is in that space of death and dying. And what it means is that somebody who has a terminal illness and has been diagnosed with 6 months or left to live, and terminal, right? So we can't change it. All we can do is make your last few months as comfortable as possible. They have to
just to briefly follow up. So in Austria, at least according to AI, but I think this may be correct enough. So it says that since January 2022, here they call it a physician, let's just use your term, physician assisted departure, is legal for adults who are terminally ill or have a permanent debilitating condition. And the law followed the constitutional court ruling that an absolute ban violated the right to self-determination.
An absolute ban?
An absolute ban of, I guess, assisted departure would have violated the right to self-determination. But they only came about with that in 2022. So, it's always strange how the courts move. And in Germany, it's similar. In 2020, it was ruled that this assisted departure is generally legal and protected. Yeah. Okay. So it's here available here as well now under certain conditions. Yeah.
Well, this kind of got to be a hot topic with Dr. Kevorkian back in the day.
Exactly where I was going to go. Yeah.
And historically, it's already been legal in Switzerland. That's what I had in mind still. And for a long time, people actually traveled there for this procedure.
Yeah. And death tourism is what they call it. I remember as a child I don't know how old I was, pretty young, when the Dr. Kevorkian stuff was mainstream. And even at that age, being like, this man is giving compassion to these people. Like, they are dying. Like, we have such an aversion to death that we're not understanding that. And we take all of these interventions to keep them alive. And we're not thinking about the quality of their life over the quantity of their life. We're just so afraid of this death, and we're so afraid of our own grief afterwards.
Well, I think everybody's always been afraid of death to some degree in every culture, but we in kind of a postmodern capitalistic thing in America and the West, largely, it's like infinite growth paradigm.
the Hollywood actress better look beautiful always, or don't look old and wrinkled. You know what I mean? It's like this idea of aging and death is like denied, and in a sense, that's the whole trip of the Buddha, right? He was in the Playboy Mansion. They were like, there are no ugly models here. There's nothing, or whatever. And it's like he saw a dying or
But
dead
I'm even
people.
wondering, even in other cultures, if this whole idea of, let's call it death aversion or the complete blanking out of death, if that's not one of the main root causes for many of the issues we face in society in general, in terms of
Absolutely.
lack of empathy, lack of charity, 100 million other things.
Mhm.
And I kind of, let's say, want to give you the space once again, maybe to explain how you see it or what you've perceived. But for me, especially if it is correct that there is some ongoing existence, and if everyone was acutely aware of that, I'm pretty sure many people would act very much differently, especially if they consider, even if it's only a live review, when I'm like, do I really want to see a horror show there? Even
Totally.
just for that. So
How much we missed. I mean, so many of us. And at the same time, we're innocent and we're trying our best. And, it's the bigger culture influences us and all this stuff. So I don't try to like shame us too hard. But yeah, I think most of us are missing the point and missing the boat with our lives. And I think when it's over and it ends, we look back with this feeling of like, damn, I kind of messed that up, whether it was a huge fear. Most of the time it's fear-based, right? Most of the time it's all of the things that we're afraid of that we let get in our way. And the same thing, and this is a cliche, but I used to hate cliches because I felt like they were shallow. And now I feel like I'm old enough that I realize that like most of them are true. That's, why they became cliches to begin with. But on their deathbed, that's right. People are rarely saying, I regret this thing that I did. And they are often saying, man, there was a lot I still wanted to do that I never did. I wish I would have been braver about this. I wish I would have apologized about that. I wish I would have taken this risk, gone to this place, gone after that girl, whatever it was.
I mean, this is the one side of it, but the other side would be if I consider there is some type of continuation. Because on the one hand, I could then say, well, it's not too bad, because if I do get another life or another experience or another level, then it's not really missed.
For sure.
And vice versa, it would be like, oh, I think I would be much more considerate and nice to people or whatever else it would be if I really understood that it's not only for me within this life to grab everything I possibly can materially, no matter the cost. You see what I'm saying?
I do.
So I think that's also a large differential. So would you say from all the experiences you've had that your phenomenological experience would confirm that there is some continuation of existence in some way?
Absolutely. I believe there's a continuation of existence. And just as you said, the way that we feel about death depends on which shoes we're standing in. Our human ones that are very afraid and limited, and, or our soul ones that can almost laugh it off after a certain degree of understanding, like back into the flames I go, like see you guys next time. And even the deeper understanding that the really important people in our lives have been with us for many lifetimes. I believe in that as well. So a lot of our ideas of loss are temporary loss, they're human loss, they're not real in the bigger picture. But I don't know that it's helpful to like hurting souls and grieving souls and teenage Erin who is missing Adam to discount how real the loss is from the human experience.
Well, it's like real, but it's not ultimately true. So like when you're playing a game of Monopoly or something, you're like, damn, I'm missing, I missed Boardwalk, or whatever. Like the game feels very compelling to the participant, but when you step away from the game for a day or two or a year or something, it's like a little different. You're not like, oh, it's just a game. I mean, even if you're in a championship NCAA final or something, like at some point you're just like, well, it's a game. I have a feeling there's a kind of a distance there with that. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that just came to mind.
You're good. Interrupt on. Definitely. And I don't want to offend anybody because I know it's different for everybody, but for years after Adam died, I was so desperate for a connection with him, and he was there. I could feel him. He visited,
like the movie Ghost a little.
Yes. I mean, I wanted to crawl through the sky and be on that side. I didn't want anything to do. I did not I feel like I was born into my body, became like an embodied person like 3 or 4 years ago, right? Like I have always just been on the other side. And I know people try to be on the other side, and there are people who like do all the things because they want to be on the other side. I couldn't help it. I have to try to be here, right? Like I'm really working on my embodiment at this point in my life. But now that I don't need Adam so much, and I did have a ceremony a few years back where I really like released him. And I mean, I felt like he was holding himself back even from like other lifetimes and other embodiments to be super present in my life still. So now that I've released him and I don't have that same attachment, right, I still very much feel like I have a relationship with him, and he comes and goes, but the human part of it isn't hurting and doesn't need anything. It's more of just like, oh my gosh, my forever friend, like what, you know, and I know he'll be there to greet me when my time is up, and it's nothing but a beautiful thing. But I've had over 20 years to flesh that out and to be at peace with it. And again, the grief is just as real as the reality that none of this is real.
Yeah, I mean, there's a depersonalization and kind of this how to put there's a shadow essentially in a way to the hyper kind of spiritual woo take of like none of this is real, because that's when you can kind of get into NPCs a little, which I find tricky. Or you hear stories of people jumping off buildings, or it's a little like Inception when they're like way in the dream and she's like, this isn't even real, we got to go back to our kids, and it's like, oh god. I mean, we know from another perspective what's quote going on, but that's pretty much the same thing as a lot of people, like what you're saying, where it's just like, I don't want to be here, I want out, and it's like, oh god.
But can I interrupt on that?
Yeah, for sure.
I think there's an overarching piece, which is that if I know what's going on and I have these beliefs about how, the basic idea of how it works, I'm sure I'm missing a lot of detail. With that level of, consciousness, free will, authority, I chose to be here in this body and do these things. So I have to honor it and like be here now, right? Like I have an obligation and a responsibility to it. And even if there are times when it feels mundane and I feel like I should be living in a different reality, but like the challenge is this one right here. And so I have to have trust and faith that even if I don't like it, this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the comments really quick. People are talking about animals and pets dying and stuff. I actually had a cat that we had for a long time named Gabriel, this angel name, but that's not why we named him that. Super scared cat. Then he got like normal and so codependent to me that he was like sleeping on my neck and shit at one point. Anyway, when he was 15, he was like all ratty and stuff and like not eating. And we were like, what the heck? And the doctor or, whatever vet came in, they're like, we're going to need to put him down because he's like, his kidneys are failing or whatever. And just the ignorance of us as a family or whatever, just being like, oh, we're just going to keep feeding him. He's going to stick around. He died in my arms, which is kind of surreal. Like they put him down in my arms and he kind of just faded. But I was also kind of, I don't know. I mean, I was smoking back then more probably and stuff like that. So I was like present, but not exactly. Because we are animals to some degree as humans, even though there might be category of thought or soul or something that's necessarily different than pets or stones or whatever. How much of the process, I mean, and I'm not nailing you in here, I'm just kind of curious, right? So like how much of the process do you think is generally the same? Like do cats and dogs go across the rainbow bridge or all this kind of stuff, or are we going through different categories of like you must be this tall to ride and we've got a consciousness that's that tall to go a certain rabbit hole or whatever?
I think animals are better than us. Yeah, I think they've mastered unconditional love in a way that we have yet to do. So if there is a hierarchy, I don't think we're on top necessarily of that hierarchy. I just taught a class a couple of weeks ago with a veterinarian. You guys should go get it on my website over at Erin Mirelli. Yeah, you should go get the pet hospice class because that's what it's about. It's about this idea that like the first loss for so many people are their animals, and we tend to discredit that and discredit the grief that comes alongside it. My personal experience is all I can say. My philosophy, I suppose, is that animals are very they're fluid spiritually. They let us come in and out. They let us use them. We have a relationship with them where they allow us to. They serve us and they allow us to benefit from them. And I do think that is an ecological agreement, so to speak, but the way we've handled it is completely bastardized the agreement. We've done a very poor job with the management, but what I mean in a spiritual sense. So Adam, who I just told you about, let my freak flag show now, brother Jim. Adam came back to me in 2016 as a cat and only lived for 16 months and then died. And I had to lose him a second time. And I was like a wild woman screaming through the woods.
Hold on. This is not, I'm fascinated. I'm not laughing. I'm just like, okay, pause really quick. How did you come to the conclusion it was Adam in the form of a cat? Like what were the telltale quote signs or whatever?
Well, when I had my children years prior to Adam coming back as a cat, there was a part of me that like really wished he would come back to me as one of my children or come back to me in a close capacity. And the moment they were born, I knew that it wasn't him, and I loved them just the same. And that was that, right? So many years had passed and I was really no longer thinking about him coming back to me in a reincarnated way. And I got these kittens just kind of like dropped on my doorstep unexpectedly type of situation, 2 of them. And just, I think that, I mean, at first I just absolutely loved this cat. There was just an unexplainable love that didn't exist. You know, the strength of it was crazy. But then it became his mannerisms and his face. I mean, you can see it in the eyes. Like you could just see his soul in his eyes. And that was the time when I was going through a really hard breakup. I broke my leg and couldn't walk for a while. It was like a terrible time in my life. And so I feel like he just came to lay in the bed with me and purr over my broken bones for a few months and like help me heal through this situation and then leave. When I realized it was him, I started taking pictures and setting them next to pictures of Adam and sending those to other people who knew Adam when he was alive, including his dad and people that weren't necessarily.
You included everybody in this one. Yeah,
I did. And I was like, y'all might think I'm crazy, but blah, blah, blah. And everyone was like, I absolutely see it.
Oh, they were in concurrence.
Yeah. And my cat now has my grandma in her and she's a raging bitch. And like, I'm the only one who would love this creature and treat her like the queen that she needs to be treated as. So I believe that our loved ones come back as animals from time to time.
I don't even, let's put it this way. It takes as much energy to disbelieve something as to believe it. So I'm not against that. It's not necessarily a cultural narrative that we have. Some cultures are probably all about it. Whereas in the West, we're like, I want to be John Wayne or whatever the fuck. And it's like, we're not thinking like that. So, that's fascinating. I don't know if you've ever read the Celestine Prophecies or any of those books or seen the terrible movie.
The first movie forever ago. I
don't watch. Yeah, the movie's garbage. But the books are okay. And at some point in the second one, they're talking about how like every animal is kind of like a totem of synchronicity. Like if we're kind of, you know, when you see a badger or a deer or whatever, you know, like sometimes in a very specific culturally kind of zeitgeist bound way, we'd be like, that animal's in my presence and I'm in a 3D space and wow, it's making noise or whatever. We'd see it like Kratz creatures or something like that. Whereas like maybe in reality, like you're saying, it's kind of like, it's not to say it's always this thing maintaining it, kind of like in the Matrix where a citizen can turn into a Smith and like back and forth.
Yes.
It's like there's phasing in and out of the kind of like putting the hand of the spirit in the Matrix, so to speak, or like a cameo or whatever you want to call it. Exactly. I'm not against that at all. That's hilarious. Hilarious is a strong word. That's interesting, I guess.
I mean, if you're up in the sky and you can do anything, and one of your options is to like go spend a few months as a cat with somebody you love a lot and like help them, like sounds like a nice option. I'm not against it.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. So we're talking about like the nice version of this. Like, oh, it's cute. You know, in a good positive sense, isn't this kind of like, in a sense, what like Pet Sematary and Cujo, somebody was saying, like the negative sense is like, oh shit, they're gonna go haunt somebody or something. How do you feel about? I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just kind of curious. You're the Pisces. Because whenever I'm giving a reading, I'm like, you know, Cancer's cool. They get the feelings. Oh, there might be like the room is cold. I don't know. Maybe there's a spirit. You're like talking to your grandmother. Like it's totally different. Like you're on another. You're on the highest water octave basically. So you're like, I see dead people, or whatever. Sixth Sense style. So. Yeah, what's your impression, if anything, of evil spirits or you know that kind of stuff? I'm not nailing you in, but if we're going to talk about like, oh, my grandma is a cat now, it's like, can Hitler be a dog, or how does that work?
Since you talk about that, there's one adjunct question to that, because some people love to talk, especially the recent years, about the idea of don't go into the light when you're dying, or don't do this, don't do that. Don't do that. You're trying to be tricked by you know the evil demiurge masquerading as something or whatever, and you're gonna be led into the reincarnation trap or something along those lines. Maybe you can also answer that part. That'd be interesting. What you think about it?
Yeah. Okay. I have a lot to say on these topics. I think we should follow the light. I think that is what differentiates a spirit from a ghost. Really, I mean, a ghost is lost, right? It doesn't mean they're bad, but they're lost. And so they have to wait for another portal to open. And then they say yes or no to crossing it. But it's essentially them saying no to walking through to the next dimension.
Have you ever seen Spirited Away, like a Miyazaki film? Oh my God, you got to go watch it. It's about spirits and stuff, but in a sense, it's about like a train station waiting, like hungry ghosts that like just need to have kind of like the karma settled so they can be released kind of thing. Anyway, when you said that, it made me think of that. Ghostface or whatever. If people know about Miyazaki, they know. Anyway, I'll shut up now. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, please send me the link. Miyazaki. I'm not sure I'll remember that word, but I would love to watch it. I am so bad at pop culture. When people are like, "Have you seen this? Have you seen?"
I got you, girl. I'll give you like I'll pepper you.
World over here, like it is entertaining enough in my head.
Yeah, honestly, my girlfriend who's a Pisces the same way. She's like, I'm like, oh, let's watch this. She never saw Saving Private Ryan. We saw it the other day. It's brutal. I forgot.
It is brutal.
But anyway, yeah, I think Pisces are just so like abstract and kind of in the clouds that it's like cinema is only so much of a portal for y'all. Yeah. If that makes sense. Anyway, I'll shut up. So you have plenty to say.
I have plenty to say. And that's not to say that a ghost can't, find another portal and go. And it's also not to say that they are bad. Yeah, there's just like with humans, right? There is dark energy out there. There's gross stuff that I don't want to play with. I'm like trying to decide which story I want to share with you. So many. Okay. Do you want the Haunted Mansion story, the Teenage Ouija board story, or
let's do all of them. Hey, we got an hour or so, right? Like, feel free, rip. I mean, these might not be documented, and for the record, these are your experiences. So whether they're ultimately true or not, who knows? And Pisces can be delusional. Let's be real. Yeah. But at the same time, you guys are seeing the magic in a higher weird way. Start with the oldest one first. I'm guessing Ouija stuff, and then it kind of goes from there.
Okay, I'll start with this though. As a kid, like teenage years, right? Like so many kids are, because I had always had one foot in this world, one the other. We don't have a lot of like positive, constructive representation of how to play in the spiritual realms when we're teenagers. And sometimes like the best, in quotes, best representation is like horror movies. And it's that space that is acknowledging that it's real. And I think that's a bad thing, right?
Like Candyman or something.
Yeah. Oh, I loved Candyman. That was one of my favorites. Poltergeist. Loved these.
So it's like tapping on the veil.
I was like, okay, this is dark and I don't like it, but they know that they got it. At least they understand this part, right? And I don't like that because I feel like a lot of young people who are susceptible, who have a sixth sense, are drawn to that just because it's one of the only places they can be drawn to.
That's cultural programming. I'm 1,000% certain. Yeah, good point. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I don't like to play with this stuff now as an adult. I have pretty strong boundaries around not doing it. So I will tell you stories from before I got that good with my boundaries around it. The Ouija board story is kind of funny, I guess. I don't know. My daughter's 22 now. So when she was 13, I guess that was 9 years ago, she had a bunch of little friends over. They were having a sleepover in the basement, and I was in bed in my room, and it's 3 a.m. as it always is when these things happen. And she calls my cell phone from her cell phone downstairs, screaming, "We're all scared, Mom, come downstairs, come help us." So I go downstairs to find like 5 little teenage girls like huddled in the shower together because they're terrified of what just happened. And they were playing the Ouija board. And I think that, when we all believe that a symbol has meaning over a long period of time and we have a collective consciousness around that, there is some power given to it. And so the spirits on the other side, they also recognize that as like, oh, this is a door and there's people on the other side of it. And they're usually like vulnerable teenagers, right? And so I think that the spirits hanging out on the other side of the Ouija board are like the creeps at the bar, like the old gross men. It's the lowest hanging fruit, right? So
like the Ouija is like a roofied drink. And they're like, well, this one is available now. All right,
yeah. So I get why the teenagers want to do it, but like there are cooler people to hang out with on the other side than the guys on the other side of the Ouija board. And so they were doing whatever they were doing. And at once, all of the lights in the house went out. And so I'm like, of course, I believe in the supernatural, but I'm always going to like eliminate the practical stuff before I go to that assumption. So I go and switch the breaker, make sure it's not electrical. Indeed, every light in the basement in every single room, 4 or 5 different rooms, went out at the same time. So I tuck the girls in, they go to bed, blah, blah, blah. They tell me next thing in the morning, all night long, we heard scratching sounds on the wall. So I get up and I go look, and on the other side of the wall, there are all these scratch marks that had not been there before. It gets worse.
It gets worse. What were they saying? Did they give you like, we summoned a demon? Like, what were they doing?
Yeah. They were just wanting to hang out with whoever was there and invite them to the party. Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen Sinners with the vampires that recently came out. It's like they have to be invited in.
They do have to be invited in.
Yeah,
bring me back to that in a minute after I go.
I'll hold the thought. Yeah.
A few weeks later, black widows started showing up in the house. A black widow was found in my son's bed and in my daughter's bed. So we moved. And when we were moving out and we moved the bed out of my daughter's bedroom, we found the Ouija board open underneath her bed. And she had sworn that she threw it away. So that's one.
That's horrifying.
Yeah.
Scary stories to tell the kids, like part 5 of the book from the library. That's crazy. All right. Did you want to interject that thought with the invitation thing, or is that a continuation after these other anecdotes?
No, we'll just say it. We'll just say it now so I don't forget it. So as I mentioned, my sister died a few years ago, and I was speaking with a friend of mine who's a medium, who I really believe in, who, there are different levels of mediumship. I don't claim to be a medium.
Long Island medium is all I know.
Capacity. Yeah. And I was asking her, I said, listen, like my sister and I, you know, she loved true crime. She was kind of on the creepy side of things. Like we had conversations before she died about if one of us dies before the other, I expect a good haunting out of you. Like, you know,
why would you set yourself up like that?
No, not in a scary way, but just like I want to know you're here. Right.
Yeah. Tag, you're it. Yeah.
I was teasing her like, Stacy, I want to get out of the shower and I want to see your name written in the steam on the mirror. Like, come on, you know? And so I was talking to this medium friend of mine and I was saying, why can't she do that? Why can't? And she goes, that's a really good question. Let me ask her. So she comes back and says, you know how she communicates really well through like radio and through songs, which I definitely believe is a common thing for spirits to do. She said, it's easy for them, and lights as well. It's easy for them to manipulate electrical energy without siphoning energy from anything because they are electrical energy. So she can easily manipulate electrical energy as a sign. In order to manipulate physical energy, she would have to siphon that energy from something else that's alive, and that would have a negative impact on that living thing. And so that's vampirism, essentially. And so if they are manipulating physical energy, they're either vampiring it from somewhere or they have permission. Someone is sharing a life force with them.
Interesting. The thought that came to mind, if you've ever saw The Brave Little Toaster, with the radio, where he's like always sampling, like he doesn't have a voice particularly, but he's like kind of like using the mix, so to speak his mind. It came to mind with that. Yeah, so it's like
parts to create.
it's like a pastiche kind of thing, almost mixed media. So they're not like knock knock, hi, it's me. Although, see, these are one of these things, and maybe it's just because I mean I've done enough psychedelics, and my active imagination kind of makes this harder. Like I don't want to. I'm more apprehensive to watch like ghost stuff, or you know what I mean. I'm not like X-Files are cool, like at a kind of sci-fi level, but I'm not like let's go find the demons or whatever. I'm not like that really. So all right, so that was the Ouija story. Tell us some more stories.
All right. So there's a cool place in Denver called the Lumber Baron Mansion. It was built in 1890, I believe. So it's old. It was built by Scottish folks during whenever all the Scots came over. Late 1900s, 1800s. And where to start in this story? This house has so much history. There's like generations of ghost stories in this house. But during the 1970s, this mansion had been dilapidated and it was kind of like 22 or so dorm style apartments. There were two girls from Denver, age 17 and 18 there one day. The 18-year-old had just had a baby and been kicked out of her house and went and lived in this kind of dorm. It was a bad part of town at the time. And somebody came in and killed them both. Long story short, the case went cold. They never found the murderer. And the next person who bought the mansion restored it and turned it into like a murder mystery theater and began to replay their murder over and over and over, 2 or 3 times a week for the next decade.
I'm just getting the idea of Inception or Interstellar rather, where the dad is trying to like knock the books and stuff. Can you imagine just being dead and watching your murder be like the entertainment, dinner entertainment or whatever?
It's cruel and unusual.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cruel and unusual. And so back then, so I'll progress to a part of the story where I'm actually involved, but this was before my involvement with the building. Back then, the people that were in charge of it really just, profited off of it and exploited it. And it was a really ugly thing. But one thing they did do is they connected with a guy you can look up online named Chris Moon. I feel like I have to say RIP to his ex-wife, Dina, who just died. She was a wonderful lady. He is kind of like a Hollywood medium type. Chris Moon, I'm going to talk shit for just a minute. He has like bleach blonde hair. He looks like an 80s rocker. And, I was like in my spiritual phase at this point in my life. And so I'm like, who is this guy? Like
the Billy Idol.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's like glitz and glam spiritual man. But he had been dedicated to this house and to uncovering the true story of what happened to these girls and finding their murderer for like a decade. Do you know what talk boxes are?
Yeah, like the guitar thing?
No, like Frankenstein toys. They're like little wooden boxes and you open, it works like it's like an old school CV radio. So it picks up sound, but they're like old school, right? I'm sure there are I think we have apps that do it now, but like they're little wooden boxes and you open it up and there's just all these little gears inside. I can't explain it better than that. But they are for picking up the voices of the dead, according to this guy, Chris Moon, right? And so I had heard all of this history of how he had basically like found the murderer. He had set up these talk boxes in different parts of the mansion and pieced together all of this audio he had gathered from the girls talking and like really telling the story, right? Like you could hear it. Okay, that's the history. Fast forward to like 7 or 8 years ago, I used to be a wedding planner. I marry him and I bury him. And I was working at this venue as a wedding planner. I had done a lot of weddings there. And I knew about this history. And one night in the ballroom of the venue, we were hosting a kirtan, which is like a Hindu call and response music kind of thing. And we were just the venue. It was just a space that they rented out to bring their kirtan in every month. So it wasn't more involved than that. And everybody's dancing. It's like praise, you know, chanting. And this man just falls dead on his face. He's like goes from arms in the air to body on the ground. The kirtan singers circle him and are singing and like giving him this beautiful send off. We are clearing out the venue and calling the police because it was totally unexpected. We didn't know what happened. And the police come and plot twist. This guy's like heavily armed. Like he's completely strapped. And he's going to do something bad. And so we bring Chris Moon.
Oh, I thought you meant the body was heavily strapped. So
yes, no, it was like,
okay.
Yeah. The guy,
okay. I got you now.
The guy had multiple guns on him, knives on him, mace on him. He had a bomb in his car that was later found down the road.
So he was a domestic terrorist, basically.
He was a domestic terrorist. Nobody in the kirtan community knew him. People had seen him there, but he wasn't connected to anybody in the community. So that left the owners, who I should mention, bought it from the exploiter and were very dedicated to like letting the girls rest and heal. And so credit to them. But they knew about Chris Moon and his dedication, right? So they brought Chris Moon back in to try and like solve this. So Chris Moon comes back in. I'm all like incredulous about this guy. We walk up to the ballroom where this happened, the scene of the crime, if you will. And he opens up his little talk box and I'm still like discrediting him. Like I'm embarrassing myself sharing this, but I was like, who the fuck is this guy? And as soon as he gets
You do have a Capricorn moon, so your cynicism is there for real.
Yeah. As soon as it started, every single hair on my body is standing straight up and tears are just involuntarily just welling down my face. Like the thickness of spirit in the room was the thickest I had ever experienced in my life. And these girls start talking through these boxes and it is as clear as day. Like I can hear it. And I know because of the way my body's responding that it's not a hoax. Of course, I have to like engineer that later to be sure. But they told us the story. The first thing they said is we hope Joel's not mad at us because they had a crush on Joel, who is the owner of the place, who is like a good looking guy. And, you know, they were young girls who never got to, so they had a crush on Joel. They disclosed what the autopsy would say, where his vehicle would be found. All of that was true. And so they had, you know, through the work that Chris had done, they had kind of been liberated from ghosts. They had quote unquote followed the light. They were now there serving as spirits and helping, you know, being kind of guardians of the space rather than prisoners of it.
Did they strike down the guy with the guns or whatever?
Yeah.
How that was the deal? They're like, oh, fuck him.
Yeah, they took responsibility for it. They told him it was cardiac arrest. They killed him.
Oh, that's gnarly.
They were probably siphoning some of that kirtan energy.
Probably. I mean, there's a portal. Music is a damn big portal. I mean, whether you're doing Baptist Christian stuff or kirtans, like you're saying, people don't consciously tend to realize. I mean, we're raising our spirits. We're turning into little Tesla coils with
it's
concerts and stuff.
Through us.
Yeah, it makes it is a portal. It's like, I mean, Beethoven said it's the highest revelation is music.
So
like,
I'm claiming there is no judgment here, but I do find it quite amazing just to imagine the scene. And of course, there could be unlimited parallel reasons for this, which I cannot possibly fathom. But just the idea of someone really potentially wanting to hurt someone and then just having a kirtan being sung and that sending him over. He even had a nice exit in that way, if you will. Yeah. But this is pretty amazing because it's so often also in this world, of course, of apparent materiality, people wonder, you know, what can I do? I have no force to apply against someone, and not even that it should have to be a battle, but just in this example. And then, well, people having a nice time singing and nothing bad occurs. Just one guy exit. I mean,
it's a beautiful death.
That's crazy. Yeah. Of course, no. This is amazing story. Yeah,
and there's like social justice involved and all sorts of stuff.
And to be clear, so you
mentioned in Denver, you can go have high tea there and hear all the stories. Yeah,
I will tell them we know you or whatever. But guess what? She came on our thing. We heard about. What's it called again?
The Lumber Baron Mansion. It's in North Denver.
All right.
So you were basically there when you first heard these recordings or these messages being played back. this was, I guess, was this picked up by the police and they tried to follow through with it? Like, were they cool enough to take it as evidence or as a lead, let's say?
They did, because Chris Moon had formerly helped solve the crime. Like, they had closed the case based on the evidence that he found. Unfortunately, the guy had just died, so it wasn't necessarily justice in that way. But because he was credited for that, I think that cops work with mediums a little bit more than we want to admit.
It's not like Loud and Proud. Like, I just saw this terrible Dennis Quaid movie on Tubi, I think, or something, with my girlfriend, called Frequency. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but basically this cop, you talk through time through the Aurora Borealis through the radio, and they're like, oh my gosh, you're gonna die tomorrow, and then he doesn't, and it's like kind of screws things up, and it's a murder thing. It's not that great of a movie. It's got moments or whatever, but anyway, the point is, that was the trip, and that was like, I'm talking to my dad in the past about a murder because there's this like serial killer, and they're like thwarting him in the future based off the evidence. Long story, I don't have to convolute this with that, but the point is, the cops tend to use psychics and stuff a lot more than they're going to print up in the fucking papers, probably. Because in some way they're like, any lead's a lead. Let's try it.
And that's a rabbit hole too. I mean, like MK Ultra. I mean, the cops are well aware that there are abilities. Yeah.
So we have one related question just from Mythoclast. It says, I wonder about this. So about this crossing over. Technically, we aren't around to be haunting anyone. Is it like an imprint in space of time? If we reincarnate, do we still have the ability to quote unquote haunt? So I have my own models on this, but of course I'm curious what you would say about this or how you see this.
I would say let's break down the word haunting, right? Like there's like friendly haunting in jest, where I think you can be a spirit, you can have evolved to a higher consciousness, and you're coming back to play with the people that you love. That kind of haunting's cool. But if you mean like really haunting someone, I would say that's a ghost and not a spirit. Right? I would say that that's someone who is stuck here. And yeah, they're either lost or it's an imprint, I think is the right word that you said. Yes, I do think they get stuck in liminal space. But I think it's a fracture, right? It's not like their whole lifetime is stuck in liminal space, or their entire consciousness is stuck in liminal space, or their ability to get out of it is the same as it would be. I think it's something that is fractured and an imprint, something that is on repeat. It's hell, right? I think it's Groundhog Day, only 2 minutes of it, not 24 hours of it.
So if going with that idea, if you've seen the movie Inside Out, it's a little like, oh, anger got stuck behind and he's scratching at the film over and over and over again. And then other parts might transcend. I mean, this gets tricky into the mystery of life. We don't know. This is, no one knows. Anybody who says they know is like, good luck. Yeah. But it's fun to conjecture these things. And we have to be closer than we think and simultaneously further than we think, or something like that, where it's just like, because even in the Matrix movies, they're like, oh, program. I mean, if people have seen the movies, and the second one, I think, they're basically like programs that couldn't upgrade are like obsoleted, but if they're not, they get like kind of ducked out into the Merovingians thing, and that's why he had werewolves and vampires and stuff. It's like they're not, and ghosts, so to speak. So it's like it's not uploading in a certain way. This is totally tangential. I don't know why I'm talking about this, but like.
No, it's a cool context to put it in. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, yeah. So sometimes maybe things that wouldn't make sense to the program at large are like not totally phasing in programs, if that makes sense. It's like it's not computing. It's like trying to play in television on an Xbox or something. It's like, I don't know. I'm rambling. I'll shut up.
It exists, but it's outside of like the recognized field of.
Well, even when you said the fractaling and like the fracturing, it's like, I'm not against that. I mean, I've never really thought about it that way, but it's like, who's to say that, that like the part of you that enjoys joy gets like, Valhalla, and the part of you that's like an angry miser gets to experience haunting people or whatever. Like, and it honestly might not be like a one size fits all situation. Like we're saying, like, oh, you die and you go down the slide. It's like, maybe there's like 6 options or a million infinite options where it's like, do you want to go be a stone? Do you want to be a
6
ghost?
Parallel options.
Yeah.
All of them take at the same time.
Yeah. I want to be one of those like little squid that just hang out on a rock somewhere tropical, and the ocean's just like crashing up against me.
My octopus teacher.
Yeah. And I think they probably only live for a couple weeks. So it'd be like a short commitment. I just want to go and rest for a minute,
Have you seen that film?
Yeah, it's good. I have seen it.
It's profound. And that's a good example where it's like the animals, even if we want to be a Darwinian kind of like whatever, materialist or something, it's like, wow, animals are intelligent. We shouldn't maybe eat them or whatever. I'm a vegan. I'm not going to push that on people, but maybe we should reconsider our relationship with animals, horses, whatever, octopus, dolphins, whatever it is. Like the Cove, that was crazy. It's like, holy shit, these Japanese people are doing crazy shit. Anyway, so on the one hand, it's like this evolved paradigm where it's like we might want to treat the environment around us a little more conscientiously, but simultaneously it kind of plays into a little what you're saying, where it's like maybe people come in and phase in for a minute and he was being taught by his grandfather as an octopus, or who knows what the fuck that trip is.
It's both. I mean, it's both. I think octopus and dolphins and elephants are highly, much more conscious than we are, and tapped into a lot that we can't see. But yeah, I also think that they're not as connected to ego. They're not as connected to permanence. They, we have a tendency to think about how things are going to negatively like impact us. I don't think the animal's sitting there going, well, if I let you have my body for 10 minutes, I don't know, when I come back, it might not feel good. Like, they're just better than us.
Or they're tripping differently, that's for sure.
They're definitely tripping differently, for sure.
Yeah. Whenever I used to trip, I had cats, and whenever I was like dosed or something, they would like, the animals fucking knew.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. They're always like,
going off tangent a little bit, but like, have you ever been able to like adapt and be inside the consciousness of an animal?
You mean like personally, like from my perspective, kind of like I think I know what you mean, but I want to make sure you're
try theirs on.
Like as a mental exercise, or what are you talking about?
More experientially, more of a jumping in them, just like they can jump into us.
I have not like skinwalked or whatever you want to call that, or toteming. I don't even know what one to call that. No, I've never tried that.
Warging, we would call it.
Warging. Warging. I haven't heard that word before. Okay. I've only experienced it once, and I didn't really mean to. It just kind of happened, but it was
the third eye raven.
Yeah. It was it was amazing. It just made me realize how much we wear our consciousness like we wear an outfit, and so much of it is hardwired, and then so much of it is programmed as we go. And when we take this thing off and we put a different one on, like it's just a completely different orientation. So much of our reality is connected to our ego
and conditions of belief and definition. Yeah.
So without asking you to necessarily share any particular experiences, I have, as some may be able to tell by my outfit, been in various altered states, and the most interesting one, although the core feeling is similar in most of the things that I partook in because of I know what to choose, but basically the highest frequency I ever considered, this would be the Joe Rogan question. So it has to do with, I would say, density of DMT within one's brain or whatever. And once I attended a psychedelic integration session, and people were talking about doing, they call it BUFO, 5-MeO DMT. And then I think afterwards, because I hadn't known about it, I asked someone, oh, what did you see, and so on, because it is known with DMT, done properly, of course, PSA, kids don't take drugs. and really know what you're doing if you want to pull out an Ouija board. But so I asked this lady, and so what did you see, and so on, because I thought of DMT, and she was like, well, nothing really, or something. And I was like, what are you saying, like nothing? Usually that's like the most spectacular things you can see. And then later, at some point when I experienced this myself, I was like, oh, now I understand what she's talking about. My ego is strong enough to still keep talking and trying to force imprints or things or definitions, but the core feeling, which you can access through many different states, of course, and practices, the only thing that remained, as I would call it now, was unconditional love and connectedness, for lack of a better term, or unity. And that to me was like, okay, if this really is the highest possible frequency I can perceive as a human, or one flavor of it, and if that truly is the core of existence, how should I say, I'm cool with it, And even before I was kind of aware of this and so on, but in this state, it was like the purest, overwhelming feeling, which almost managed to push all the definitions and anything else completely aside. And once even, just very briefly, it wasn't that of an altered state, but I kind of hit my head. I briefly lost consciousness for a second. Honestly, I think because I was smoking too strong of a tobacco, and I was blanking out. I was looking at the ceiling just outside of my friend's door, like on a hallway. I'm looking at the ceiling, and slowly it starts fading or something. And I notice my consciousness is not really here. I can't perceive so much or think even, but I'm like, okay, keep your eyes open, keep your eyes open. I want to see what happens. And slowly I start missing the definitions even of the ceiling. So I don't even know what I'm looking at. And then I realized, oh, it's pretty cool. I don't know where I am. I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't know who I am. I don't know my name. I don't know anything. And then I asked the question, okay, cool. I'm in the state now. I'm still conscious somewhat. What remains? And the answer, tacky or not, was you remain.
Okay.
So yeah. that's my brief experiences in that, in these levels. Would you say from your experience that is also what you know, the Jim always likes this elephant example, you know, everyone's touching a different piece.
Yeah.
But is this the core idea that you also get, or even when you're doing the work you're doing, that this is the type of energy that's coming in?
Yes. I have done DMT a number of times as well. And I have actually had a wide variety of experiences of it. I can relate to what you're saying about like what remains and the nothingness, but there are levels and rooms to that place. And I've been in some other rooms as well. And it makes me wonder if we're supposed to be there or not. I'm interested.
I hear that.
I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
I mean, my first answer to that would be, well, because it is also naturally occurring, and even though it may not be the most intuitive thing, you know, to hug a frog, let's say, but since it is there and we are given the capacity to think of these things and devise it and extract it, I think there is a place for it.
Yeah.
Certainly, because even before I was about to say, oh, I'm going to ask you the Joe Rogan question. Did you ever smoke DMT? And that's definitely the wrong place to even promote it, because you have all these, you know, either tech billionaires or broke teenagers that have all kinds of psychological issues and pharmaceuticals. They shouldn't be partaking, obviously. But yeah, I think it definitely has a place. But what are your experiences, or what is the feedback that you
I just want to say one thing really quick.
Did you feel unwelcome? Maybe I want to ask.
So as far as that Bufo, Kelly, my girlfriend the other day said she had heard one of these Bashar talks saying that basically somebody who's talking about Bufo and this, that, and the other, he's like, don't take it from the frog because there's consequences to that, but you can smoke DMT otherwise in other ways, which I found interesting. I didn't hear that talk or whatever, so I have no clue of the context. Anyway, yeah. You give an anecdote at some point that's kind of semi-relative to what you're saying in terms of like getting cock blocked out of dimensionality and like, should we be here? Are we trespassing?
Yeah.
But go ahead and
well, there are times I've been cock blocked, right? Like doses that should do something and don't is a thing. And then you have to always, when that happens, you're doing it for the wrong reasons, right? Like we really can't be doing these things
like recreationally.
And they're also not for pain management, you know,
or avoidance.
In my personal experience. Yeah. My personal experience when I'm doing it a lot, when I'm doing it because I'm hurting is when I have a bad experience. Yeah.
Interesting. Right. So in a sense, it's like, look, you can't avoid that. You know, yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'll just say it really quick. The first time I smoked DMT, I had a Kundalini awakening, met Egyptian deities. I was not mentally prepared for this. It was just surreal. And the next time I went back, I saw like a manted being be like, you said you're a Christian, you're not supposed to be here, kind of thing. And I was like, whoa. I've done it a lot since then, but I haven't ever had those kind of entity contact blast off situations. So when I hear people talking about like, you know, getting kind of not allowed in or weird vibes like you're talking about, like this, you know, do not enter, you don't have to pass, guardian of the threshold kind of stuff, I've experienced it, so I can sympathize or whatever, but maybe not everybody has had that happen.
I'm just so close to the edge anyway. I feel like they have to keep me here, and it would be too easy for me to cross over and not return, to be honest. Every time I've done DMT, it starts the same way, which is this intense remembering, this intense memory of being there before. This everything turns into community, right? The blanket has a million faces on it. I'm surrounded by ancestors, but they don't look like humans, but I know what they are, right? And there's this metal techno kind of it's our senses trying to keep up with the frequency that we've entered, and we can't quite metabolize it rightly, and then you get a little bit cold, right? Then you take another hit. And where I've gone after that next part has varied greatly. Has varied greatly. From feeling like I've been privileged to see the center of creation and the gears in the middle of it and what that looks like, and understanding, you know, the symbolism of kind of like a conveyor belt, or just the, you know, the continuation and the pattern and the shapes. And it feels like seeing the underbelly of reality, the energetic underbelly of it all.
Pink Floyd, Welcome to the Machine kind of thing. It's like, oh shit, here it is.
Yeah. I've also had really transcendent experiences where I, you know, felt like I shot into space with a rainbow under my butt, and I came back with stars all over my skin, and lived in this afterglow for a long time. The very first time I did it was with a partner. This was the first time was the most profound. And I think if you're doing it in the right container, that's often the case. But with him, we were looking at each other, and we were swiping each other's face and like seeing each other in every embodiment and in every lifetime. And that was super cool. But a negative
very conscientious trip toy or whatever. It's like, let's swipe left or right.
It was, we made the mistake though, because it was the first time when we were rookies of lighting a bunch of candles. And before we knew it, we were on the ground and we had to like come into this reality and be like,
we're going to burn down the house.
We can't burn the house down. Yeah.
Burning down the house. All right. Yeah. You can keep giving us trip reports if you want.
I don't know if I want to tell you the last one or not. There was one bad one on
YouTube. It's wide.
I don't know if there's any value of adding it. Yeah.
No, I mean, I think, okay, so this is a presupposition and it's not true, but it seems like when people have bad trips, it's like they're dealing at, wrinkles of trauma or parts of themselves they're not used to or this kind of stuff. Like, was that manta being part of me that's like the religious stoic cultural thing that's saying you're breaking the cultural rules? Was it a really ontological other being, like Gandalf staffing me in the face and saying, do not enter? I have no clue. And I don't know if anybody can. So if you want to tell us about a trip, that's cool. Like most people just glow and say, this is the best. It's like some of the most intense, profound trips I've ever had are like where I'm like holding on for dear life saying, when is this going to be over kind of thing.
Right. And then you realize, during or when it is over, what the whole, like there's a message, there's a meaning, right? Which is gather your own power, people.
Word. Well, I guess that's the end of that story. So, I mean, mushrooms are a little similar. They're only one phosphor, I think, chemical off of DMT. So similar, same, but different. LSD to me is never, it's more clean and, fun, I guess. It's my preferred drug of choice, where it's just like, oh, I can handle this and whatever. But do you find, especially as a psychically tuned kind of individual dealing with the death portal on the regs, are some, are mushrooms more like, are there any drugs that tend to bring, or psychedelics, I should say, psychedelics that bring experiences more to the fore of your awareness, or, and this is totally random, but then I'll just shut up and let you talk. I know in human design, there was a guy who was in Hawaii that my friend was trying to turn me on to. He passed in between. She was like, get a reading from him. And I never did. And then he died. But basically there was this whole trip about like, don't touch my body for 3 days. Like almost like Egyptian style, like mummification rites, where it's like, in our culture, we like, put them in a box, bury them, turn them to ash, whatever, like real quick. It's like a process that's pretty quick, or they're sitting in a morgue or something. Whereas he was under the impression that there was like, the soul has to do certain things. I don't know where I'm going with this, but like, I guess you can answer them. They're different questions, but like, do psychedelics aid or help or anything in any way that you perceive, like, your side of things as the nurse? Are you seeing like, magic on that front? And then do you think there's a prescriptive in terms of how we should approach death and dying?
Yeah.
Like, are there rules that we don't know about culturally where it's like, oh shit, we forgot to don't touch the body for 3 days while like it's, distilling or whatever the heck?
Yeah. Two very different questions. So let's do them separately. Psychedelics. Yeah. I mean, we're on a new frontier. We think it's a new frontier. It's only legally a new frontier. It's an ancient frontier.
Right.
Psilocybin in particular, but, sometimes ketamine or sometimes other, medicines, for families and for the fear of death, right? Bringing that in to a community, whether it's families or friends or whatever, consenting adults with a therapist in a container, where we can really release that way. Because sometimes, some of the work as a death doula, we call it the legacy stage. It's when we know we're going to die, but we're still alive, right? And so what we're trying to do is unpack our fears and unpack like what is keeping us from having a peaceful death. And there's a wide variety of what that can be. It's your spiritual resolution, your relational resolution, your financial resolution, your
fear of the unknown,
fear of pain, fear of the unknown, so many things. And psilocybin's really good at padding that and allowing us to have those feelings without the fear, and allowing us to see beyond, our own constructs and creating new pathways, and also breaking down, this world and that world, and inviting us into a liminal space and letting us see that that's not as terrifying as we might think it is, right? So I think that there can be, for families who want it, a really, really profound opportunity for preparing for death in a healthy way, doing some of the mitigative work that will not cancel out your grief, because as long as you love, you will grieve, but that will cancel out some of the fear and some of the complicated grief. So yeah.
And some of the perceptions, it'll alter your perceptions on the situation at hand. Yeah. Okay. So that was a good, I don't know if it was like Fantastic Fungi with Paul Stamets or what. I feel like I saw some documentary where people were doing psilocybin right before they died, or they kind of like what you're saying. It's like, I know I've got cancer, or, some of these people, and just the way that they were able to reset make peace essentially with it, kind of grok that there's more to it and that they're grateful. Like it opens your heart in such a way that you're willing to walk down that path as opposed to like bucking the whole way and saying no.
Yeah, it can be beautiful. But I also don't think people need it as much in those last few days. I think we are having a naturally psychedelic experience when we're on the edge of death.
Yeah. And even in the Tibetan Book of the Dead and stuff like that, that comes back to the second question where it's like, are there ways to approach this that, for example, the Tibetan and Egyptian Books of the Dead are like, here's how you guide someone through these halls. They can get lost. And, whether it's follow the light or not, or, like there's rules to certain cultures. I'm not sure if that's true or not. What are your thoughts on that whole concept? And do you prescribe to any kind of metric of, guidance like that, or how does that work?
I don't prescribe to any as my own core belief. I think there's a lot of variation, and it's okay for there not to be one answer, and for people to do whatever is culturally feels good to them. In our American culture, as you said, we are very quick to just outsource it, have the coroner take their body away, they're put in a morgue. If we even see their body again, we're paying for it. We're paying the funeral home for a viewing where they're embalmed and the family feels exploited or, up on stage, so to speak. We really do it the wrong way. And that's the core of the work that I do as a death doula. I don't think it's right that we love our people throughout their lives, from childhood, to teenagers, to the young days, through their marriages and their education and their careers. And then the biggest thing of all happens, and we're so scared that we completely trust and pay majorly corporations. It's a very corporate industry to manage that care. And I know what that care looks like behind the curtain. And it's very disrespectful to the human body and the human spirit and people's bank accounts. And so a lot of my work is how to reclaim that and do that in a more ethical way. From the body perspective, there's not a right or a wrong, right? Both Muslim and Jewish tradition buries the body. As I say this, I'm thinking about the fucking war that's happening and how nobody's getting the proper burial rights and how much that bothers me. But if they were getting the proper burial rights, they would, be buried within 24 hours. They would not be put 6 feet down, pumped full of formaldehyde, encased in a metal tomb. All of these things prohibit decomposition, right? There is a belief and an understanding that our body has used and fed off of the earth all of our lives. And it is a sacred duty and an obligation to give our body back to the earth in a way that
circle of life stuff
that will feed the soil, right? Yeah. And that will create new life. But our modern funeral industry for the last 200 years, I think the earth's pissed off about it. I actually think it's an environmental issue that needs more conversation than it's getting, because nobody really thinks about it, right? But we have been refusing to give our bodies back to the earth. And there is nothing we can put into the earth that will feed it and nourish it more than our own bodies. Absolutely nothing. The fuck are we doing? Regenerative farming, please get on these trends. And so now we do have water cremation, natural organic reduction, which is essentially human composting, and different methods.
Seed pods with the tree stuff. That's kind of how I want to roll. Except am I going to be a haunted tree?
That one is a fallacy, but there's similar things that are real. Yeah. So I think the earth's mad that we haven't been giving the bodies back. But then the other side of that is the application of grief and how people, if you look at, we're all going to be a mess when we're going through it. But if you look at people a year out, some of us are still not functioning and some of us are doing pretty well. And I think that has a lot to do with our exposure to the body of our loved one after they've died. I don't think it's psychologically healthy to love somebody and then just poof, they're gone and we never see them again and they're outsourced to strangers. I think we're really missing the full completion.
There's not a lot of closure there.
That circle. Yeah. And so I advocate with my families that we can keep the body here for 3 hours before the funeral home comes, or 10 hours or 24 hours. When my sister died, we kept her body for 9 days, which is a very long time. It's a radical way to go about it. But man, the processing that we got to have so many ceremonies to show her love and ceremonies to grieve. And she died by suicide. So ceremonies to be fucking mad about it. And big ceremonies that everybody was invited to, and Catholic ceremonies for the Catholic people, and me getting to watch her body change a little tiny bit every single day, so that by day 9, there was enough decomposition for me to say, it's time. Your body is telling me it's ready to move on to the next thing. And whether or not that's right or wrong, it felt better for me to wait until her body showed me that sign to then say, okay, we'll move forward with the water cremation. than for me to do it before her body showed it. And I think it's important for us to spend time with the bodies of our loved ones, whether that's 30 minutes or days.
I appreciate you telling us that. I know that's a heavy, memory and all that. But just to even get an idea that like 9 days, that's a lot longer. I know in the Philippines, I think, or some places, they literally just dress up their dead and have cigarettes and stuff, and they just sit and almost like mummify, basically.
Every 2 years, they dig them back up. They give them a fresh change of clothes.
Yeah. It's a different culture, totally different trip.
It's cool.
And
we don't have
like,
to be so afraid of it. Being afraid of it doesn't serve anybody.
And a lot of this might even have to do with just like the regions you're in. I know that in Tibet, like they do sky funerals where they're just like, look, put them in a bag, the birds, circle of life, here you go, buzzard food or whatever. I had heard somewhere, maybe on a podcast or something a few years ago, about the fact that I think it was during the American Civil War that formaldehyde and stuff like that kind of became more normalized, where it's like, we want to see our son who died in that battlefield and ship him to us, and we want, send him off that way. And do you have any opinion or whatever on the because during that podcast I'd heard something to the effect of like, it's a lot more clean. Like people tend to think like, oh my God, dead bodies, don't touch it. Ew. What in your estimation is like the cleanliness factor and all that kind of jazz, if that makes any sense?
Well, most diseases are not transferable after death, and so we don't really need to worry about contagion. And if there is contagion or something that you're worried about, it's a lot safer to keep the body intact and not cut it open for embalming, right? So if you're cutting it open, you would have more concerns than keeping it intact, in terms of the fluids. You're right, embalming was not commonplace until the Civil War, and it was because we didn't have refrigerated trucks and transportation to get the guys back home for their burials, right? So at that time,
a business.
It was
I got an idea.
It was like really, truly pickling at that time.
And
they would get them back home for a proper burial. So there was a purpose for it back then. So I don't knock it as a bad thing at the time. It was a solution for the situation at hand. But it just kept going on as common practice after that, when it was really no longer needed. And also, it's like uniquely American. We do it in America, Canada, the Philippines, and New Zealand. A lot of European cultures have illegalized it altogether. You can't do it in Italy. You can't do it in France. So embalming means that we're cutting 2 arteries, one in the neck, one in the ankle. We're letting all the blood out of the body. I'm going to ruin everybody's day by saying this. You can edit it out if it's too much.
We're live. We're not editing anything.
Oh, great. In most jurisdictions, I hope nobody's eating a sandwich. In most jurisdictions, the blood goes into the public water system.
What?
Yeah.
And
I
wonder what the spiritual ramification of that is. I mean, it's got to have some.
If you want to talk about spiritual ramifications of death care, I'm going to disturb you even more in a minute. Then we pump the body with formaldehyde, right, which is a known carcinogen. The lifespans of embalmers is at risk. It has to happen in industrialized areas, and we just don't need it. Like, why are we stopping our body from decomposing? Why? Like, ask yourself that question. That is what our
microwave solution. We don't have to microwave food. I mean, it's convenient, but it's like got effects that we might not be aware of, kind of thing. Okay, so scare us some more.
I have to tell you one more thing on this topic. And guys, sorry, this is the most gruesome thing I'm going to say. It's not palatable, but you need to know so that knowledge is power. And if you don't know, it will happen to the people that you love if you subscribe to Western death care. When your loved one dies, not only will they do that, and they will charge you for it, they will also close the mouth by sewing it or gluing it shut. And I feel like that is the biggest fuckery of cursing a soul, to bind their mouth shut after they have died. We teach alternative ways to do this, right? Literally all you have to do, close their mouth, take a scarf, tie a little bow on top of their head so it keeps it shut until rigor mortis has set in. And then you can take it off once rigor mortis has set in. And it will stay that way for about 3 days before it starts to open. And then you can do it again if you need to.
Are they just trying to prohibit gases from escaping? Or is that the theory? Or why are they doing that? Because the idea that came to mind was Beetlejuice, that shrunken head with the, the sewed mouth or whatever.
It's aesthetic. They do it because people, when we die, we don't have muscle control anymore. So our eyes are open and our mouth does hang open, and it makes people uncomfortable to see. But there's, as I said, such a simpler, non-invasive way to do that than is done in the funeral home. So if you have a death doula, that is one thing we're going to do for your loved one, is make sure that their mouths are not sewn shut.
Yeah, there's a beautiful film, a Japanese film called Departures. Have you ever seen that?
Mm-mm.
Oh man, I'm gonna start sending you
You
stuff.
need to send me a list of all the
Yeah,
things
no, I got you,
you
girl. I
watch.
got you.
Thank you.
Everybody should watch this. It's in Japanese, but the whole point is a guy basically is a cellist, and I don't want to give too much away, but basically he gets a part of the funerary industry, and there's like all this ritual. I mean, Japanese with tea, for God's sakes, let alone bodies. So they're doing all this kind of stuff, and you get to see the beauty and just the not pageantry, but the drama kind of around sending off and what to do with the body and all that stuff. It's fascinating. You'll love it. It's got a beautiful
Yeah.
soundtrack. It's a really beautiful film. But it is in Japanese, so you're gonna read subtitles.
Okay.
In any event, yeah, that's bizarre. That wasn't as gruesome as I was expecting. I don't know why. I mean, you know, like the way the Egyptians pulled the brain out of the nose and stuff like that is pretty gnarly.
You want me to talk about autopsies?
I don't know. Your kid has a fucking meeting in like soon, so I want to keep an eye on the clock just for your sake.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could talk about autopsies if you want, but
Well, I can probably do about 15 minutes more. So whatever topics you think are going to be most relevant. That's a shock factor one. I don't know if it's the best use of time or not. That's up to you.
Well, Raphael, you guys decide. I'm open to whatever. I do want to know what kind of services you're doing, what you're up to, what your hopes are. I know that you said you had kind of a phoenix rising out of the ashes situation with your business. We don't have to touch on it much, but she does spend her time between the Caribbean at some level and the States. So she's doing kind of a international thing to some degree. Whatever's clever. Yeah, spin the bottle. What do you want to talk about?
Awesome. Cool. Great. Well, yeah. So in 2019, right before COVID, I started a company called Death Wives, trying to share this education with the public. And I was shocked at the positive response. You know, people were like, we need more of this. And the media picked it up right away. And we kind of just got really lucky with interest. I will not go into what happened with that, but my business partner came to me about a year ago. That was a joint effort between two of us, and for her own reasons wanted to change that. So what we've done is turn Death Wives into an online school. So you can go to deathwives.org and buy like 1 to 2 hour long death education classes, super, super affordable. Like access is the pillar of that entire business. So everything's $50 or so. And get a really,
I love that, by the way.
Really,
yeah, it's got to be available. Fuck all these people who are like $2,000 to talk to me for 10 minutes. It's like,
right.
What?
No. Access matters. You can go get a robust death education on your own time for a small investment. And we feel like that's important, right? Like obviously everybody works for money and we have to make a living, but our goal when we set out was to widen the narrative around death and dying and to make this education accessible to people. So that's what we do over at Death Wives. And then since then, in this last year, my 4 of Cups, right, has been like, okay, I have all this passion and knowledge and experience and education, and I need to build a new business with it. And so what am I doing next? And that looks like intersectionality with other systems, like going into systems to create change within them. And so that means working with CNAs and hospices and doctors and nurses in the medical system and trying to create change about how we handle death and dying in the medical system. It means teaming up with birth doulas and midwives. I was just at a conference in Canada. It was the first international conference for doulas, kind of connecting with the birth doula side of things. And then speaking about it publicly. I had a TED Talk a couple of years ago. I always say yes to podcasts. I just want
You did have a TED Talk. I knew that somehow. So what was, it's on YouTube, I'm guessing. What was the topic?
What did we call it? How to take care of your loved ones all the way till the end. We talk about a lot of stuff. I talk about medically aided dying, Adam's death, my sister's death, but really the point of it is like, we have to approach death with more love than fear. Right. And I know that sounds cheesy, but like, that's what the mushrooms teach us at the end of the day too. And that's what life teaches us at the end of the day too. We have to approach it with more love than fear. Yeah.
Well, every good movie and book and stuff, whether it's Star Wars and Anakin or whatever, the point, I think that's the big narrative, and we just have to hammer it home so many times. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Keep ripping. I don't know if we'll put it in the comments or whatever, but yeah, if you YouTube TED Talk, I'm guessing your name. What was that under? Erin Mirelli?
Yeah, if you just Google my name, my TED Talk will come up and my website will come up. Erin Mirelli. Erin Mirelli is where you'll find all of the things. And then I have a lot of other education too. I've got, private mentorship. Every quarter, I start a new program called Death School, where we meet twice a week for 8 weeks, and we explore the entire arc of this, from the ancestral side to the paranormal side to the death laws in the funeral industry and the green stuff. And that's really life-changing to everybody. I keep it small. I only let 13 people in per time. And that's still nowhere close to $2,000. Access still matters, but that one's a real program that costs a little bit more.
I hear you. Yeah, people in the comments are talking about that movie. I'll send it to you. Everybody should watch it, but it isn't Japanese. All right. So what are some of the hopes that you see in the future? I mean, you're kind of reorienting your life? I know everybody in the US definitely, but in general, I mean, Pluto's in Aquarius, so it's like, our society's getting reshuffled here, and we're all kind of trying to figure out where's the lifeboat on this Titanic thing. So yeah, what are your hopes? What are your fears? I'm going to hit you up with some of these movies, and maybe we can collaborate musically or something, get you back on the train with that.
That would mean so much to me. That'd be such a
I got you.
growth thing. So thank you.
It'd be a pet project.
It's international stuff. Like as you alluded to, I leave the US absolutely as often as I can. I'm not rich. Don't get the wrong idea. I just have international priorities.
You have Jupiter in Sagittarius 9th house. You love travel. It is what it is.
I love travel. I love other cultures. There's nothing like leaving American culture to make you understand it better, right? It's kind of hard to understand something that you come from and that you're immersed in. And so it's been really valuable for me to spend so much time in other cultures and look at ours. And when I look at it, there are certain things I do appreciate. There's a lot of convenience and
oh God, that's the underlying theme.
It's convenience, but it comes at such a high cost. Like we're selling our soul.
We've lost our soul. Gain the world, lose your soul kind of thing.
Yeah. But death care in other cultures, right? Death care in other cultures, because it's this idea of reclaiming it. So I've been visiting and studying death care in Jamaica, Puerto Rico, Panama. I'm going back to Panama next week. Mostly South American and Caribbean culture at this point.
What's driving it? Do you speak Spanish?
A little, not great, but they like it when I try. They're very patient with me.
Yeah, they're cool. I've been to Costa Rica twice and places, Ecuador. But so is there a conscious thing, or are you just being drawn to that Central South America situation?
It's that Merelli from Stillwater thing, I think, right? I fell in love with Puerto Rico about 9 years ago. I originally went because you don't have to have a passport to go, and I didn't have one at the time. Just a new version of me awoke there. I am my best self when I am down there. I have a 15-year-old son, and I've shared custody with his dad, which is the only reason I still live in Colorado at all. I escape because I feel alive there. And when you deal with death a lot, where you feel alive matters.
Yeah, even Jesus had to get away from the fucking groups at some point and be like, I need a break, man, or whatever. Yes. We actually just had a guest, I think 2 or 3 episodes ago. She's cool as fuck. I'm forgetting her real name off the top of my head. I know her as Rosiri, but she's an American from Miami who does stuff in Puerto Rico, and she's starting a whole children's education thing. I mean, I'll send you the episode. You can check it out, and I'll connect y'all. She's into also cool. You guys will be on the same wave.
I'd love to meet the cool people in Puerto Rico. I can't get enough.
Yeah, she's on the wave. Rafa, were you going to say something?
No, I'm listening.
I'm trying to think of anything else here as we kind of wind down. Are there places you want to go? Like, I don't know, sounds weird, like Hiroshima, the ghosts of Hiroshima, or like Auschwitz, or I don't know, are there like Egypt? Are there places you're like, I want to experience this for a kind of spooky reason, or not so much?
I definitely feel like I have had a lifetime in Egypt doing death work. I mean, I feel like the death work is so deep for me. Just my own ancestry, I would love to go to Italy and Ireland, or the places my ancestors are from, and go to those graves and those churches. And I'm fortunate because I have a pretty traceable ancestry, and it goes back about 5 generations here in Denver. So I have a lot of that available to me, like short term where I live, which is really cool. I just want to study deaf culture everywhere. Yeah.
Well, that's what the dog is barking. So pardon that little ratchet noise. Oh my God, he's a terror. But as you can hear, maybe. So yeah, I really appreciate you giving us your time and energy. Obviously, we've never connected. I'll hit you up, and you're cool. People can get in touch with her. Pardon Brody. Oh my God, he's a terrorist. People can get to you on your links that we've got included, and I hope you all, wish you all the best with your future endeavors, obviously. And it sounds like you got like a lot of moon in Capricorn. You got a business model. You're moving in a direction. Just enjoy the ride, I guess, in a Bill Hicks sense. It's like have fun, right? So
yeah, trying to have. Well, if we had more time, that would be the next conversation. Is okay. So knowing all of this, like how do we get happy, right? Like that's the next level. Is like, okay, so you're comfortable with death. Can you figure out happiness?
Because it's two sides of the same coin. I mean, it's one thing to be stoic and be like, we're all going to die, but there's like another to be present and enjoy it to the hilt. Kind of like what dreams may come. I mean, you want to have fun in the art while also having, it's both light and dark. You get the trip. I'm trying to sum it up and I can't. Anyway, your team rabbit hole is fuck. Clearly, I'm glad we got you on here, and obviously I'll try to hook you up with some people. Check out her programs, guys. It sounds like something that's affordable and very enlightening. I'll be sure to watch your TED Talk at some point, even though that's older and maybe less relevant in the sense that the business is shifted or whatever. I'm sure there's gobs of information there too. So yeah, if there's anything kind of either one of you want to say, we're wrapping up here. Yeah, I'm grateful that we're friends on Facebook, but now we're like more acquainted.
Now
I
we're
guess you could
friends.
say.
Now we're gonna
Yeah.
message each other. Yeah.
Oh God, now we're gonna Ouija across the
Yeah,
states or
hey.
something. No, I'm kidding.
No, I just want to say thank you for bringing these conversations up. Really, spreading this narrative, as I said earlier, has been my mission for a long time. So anybody who's able and willing to have these conversations, we're on the same team, and I appreciate it.
I might not dwell there all day like you, but it's good to it's like the clock touches it twice or whatever. It's like you can't ignore death. Like that's not why.
And I just dwell there for 2 weeks, then I get on an airplane.
Splish splash in the water, right?
Yeah, I was about to say your interest in deaf culture will most likely, quote unquote, force you to travel a lot away from the US as it currently is. So I guess that's a convenient setup in that sense. I'd like to thank you for all the great stories you shared, and I'd definitely be up for you coming back at some point, or I was thinking maybe even having a panel on this if it's worth it. How to be happy. I think that's a very important thing. And I'm very certain that the understanding, both theoretical and intuitive, of death and everything you're dealing with has a lot to do with that as well. So
yeah, I think
thank you very much.
That's a long lesson. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah. Did you have any last thoughts? I don't know if maybe you said them. I was disassociating because of the Brody thing for a second. So I'm like, did she wrap it up? I heard Raphael said I said my piece. I'll shut the fuck up now. But anyway, thanks again for coming on.
Yeah.
Conscious yours.
Live while you're alive, y'all. Life will be over before you know it. So live it up. Think about how you want to live. Live intentionally.
That's what's up. All right. Well,
Thanks
again, and we'll catch you on the flip side.